Prop 47, that awful California ballot initiative that Kamala Harris titled the Safe Neighborhood and Schools Act when it really meant letting felons out of jail. But what disgusts me most about Kamala Harris is her complete disregard for the victims and the mayhem that was left behind. Okay. But the victims, there are thousands of them. And like I said, we're going to profile them here. She duped voters into thinking they were making our schools and our neighborhoods safer by calling it the Safe Neighborhood and School Act. But actually, she was making our neighborhoods and our schools, which we'll also cover, much more unsafe. And to me, that makes Kamala Harris a liar and a fraud. There have been so many victims regarding Prop 47, majority of whose voices and stories we'll never know. But my guest today, she's a Prop 47 victim, and she's a fighter. And she now uses her voice to inform, to educate, to tell people her story, to warn them, especially before they hit that ballot box. And she joins us now. Kathy, are you there?
I'm here. Hello.
Hello, Kathy. Kathy and I have been friends for years. It's nice to hear your voice. And I just want to say, I mean, my take on my dear friend Kathy is what I want the listeners and the viewers to think of. I want you to think of the quintessential LA girl. I mean, LA girl, blonde, beautiful, lived it up, in the LA glory days, and got to take so much from that city, and then in return give so much back throughout her years there. That's Kathy, how I look at you.
Thank you. I could write a book.
You could. I know you. It's more than a book at this point, my friend. But why don't you, as you feel comfortable doing so, just start by telling us your story and how it relates to Prop 47, aka the Safe Neighborhood and Schools Act.
Which makes me want to, I don't know, throw up and laugh at the same time.
Yeah.
Because that title is just a big lie. But one thing I wanted to add is I also, by telling my story and standing up and fighting for myself, I'm fighting for everybody in my community. And I also want to hopefully inspire women to come forward, because most women do not come forward for many reasons. Mm-hmm. But I think it's really important to come forward. So my story is someone who probably should have remained in jail, was not in jail, and was a vagrant high on meth. He broke into my security alarm department at 5 a.m. I was a deep sleeper then. Boy, have things changed. Now I don't sleep. He broke in and raped me at knife point for an hour. I'm very glad to be alive. I feel gratitude. I feel like it was a miracle that I was able to identify him and get him locked up. Mm-hmm. And because of the laws here, which Kamala helped create, I don't want that for the whole country. And I know that California was an experiment for her, and it has failed. Mm-hmm. And it's horrifying. Every night I am awakened either to my own nightmares or to the sounds outside of vagrants walking by. I'm on the first floor, but it's up because there's subterranean garage underneath. Mm-hmm. But I can hear the street noise, and there's plenty of street noise, getting worse and worse. And if you call the police, they're so understaffed because the government doesn't like the police for some reason. I love the police.
Of course.
And So so I have this night filled of you know craziness,
Hmm.
hearing crazy people walking by, screaming, um, or speeding, crazy cars or motorcycles, which never used to happen.
Hmm.
It's, I mean, it's worse in other parts of town where there are street takeovers, but it's all part of the same thing.
Right.
And, you know, it's, I'm afraid. I'm
Hmm.
afraid for my life. I'm afraid. I mean, we just had a car stolen out of our subterranean security gated garage a couple weeks ago. They somehow, when you have to hit a little beeper to
Hmm.
get the garage to open,
Hmm.
somehow they forced that gated garage open and stole a car out of there.
Hmm.
And that's not as bad as being raped, but even with all of our cameras and our
Doesn't matter. Yeah.
security, not people security, but the cameras, and you have to
Hmm.
have a key to get into this door and that door before you can get into where the apartments are. There's crime,
Hmm.
and that's just I'm just mentioning something of recent. But
Right.
mail is stolen. Um,
Yeah.
I was talking to say it
My
again.
yeah, my favorite thing is when I would go to the post office quite often. I mean, all over LA, and there's always signs on the mailboxes that says, "Don't put your mail in here; it's tampered with." So, I want to point out one thing too, and you alluded to it, but your rapist, he was a Prop 47 parolee. I mean, I've looked
Yep,
him up, and
yep,
he was arrested numerous times for
yes,
some pretty hardcore illegal drugs. And you look at the timing of everything, and this was a guy who was in prison. And then when Prop 47, the Safe Neighborhood and Schools Act, God help us, passed, he was let out, which is just utterly disturbing to me.
yeah. I mean, it would have been really nice not to have had that happen because I have such bad PTSD.
Of course.
Uh, this wasn't last year. This was 6 years ago,
Hmm.
and I know I went through a lot of therapy when I could afford it. Can't afford it anymore, but I got a lot of good therapy, a lot of bad therapy too. But was was made to realize that PTSD is like a death, I guess you could compare it. You just don't get over it.
Hmm.
It's always going to be there.
Hmm.
You just have to learn to accept it and recognize it and understand it and not make yourself wrong for it. But sometimes I think, why did I just get so triggered? But I'm triggered by a lot.
Hmm.
I'm triggered by things I hear on the radio
Yep.
happening.
I'm
And
sure.
that's, I sort of got away from that. It's like I have this night filled of terror, either from my dreams or from what I hear, or, and then I wake up and put on the radio and this and that, this person was murdered and there was a stabbing on the metro. And I mean, it's just all bad here. And
Well.
I've lived here forever
Hmm.
and it used to be safe and it is not safe.
Hmm. And
Yeah.
when you talk about being triggered, and I'm a firm believer in PTSD because I have some from some of my own experiences. Yeah, it creeps up at you at weird times. It's like you're sitting there in the shopping mall or something. You know what I mean? And it's like then some news report happens, and you're in a real dark place, and then you realize that just brought me back. It's definitely real. And I would have to imagine, when you just brought up, you turn on the TV, or you listen to the radio and something can trigger you. I'm sure the biggest trigger point, or one of them, is listening to the Democratic presidential nominee talking about how she's going to make communities safer.
Yeah, and how she is a border, she's all for making sure that illegal immigrants don't come in. And
Hmm.
it's like being in the Twilight Zone,
Hmm.
except it's real
Hmm.
because I feel like everything that comes out of her, if her mouth is moving, she's lying.
Hmm.
And it's it's so just it's so it's awful.
Hmm.
It's so bad that safety is hasn't been happening. I mean, all around the country.
Right. Well, yeah.
I'm just talking
Yeah.
about where, yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
and well,
and
you see, it's like a cancer spreading, Kathy. You know what I mean? It's. Let's just trace it back. It's. I remember, living out there in California. It started like L.A. We were okay. It started in San Francisco. I want to point out who the DA was in San Francisco, Kamala Harris at the
right,
time. Okay,
yeah,
San Francisco tanked first under her tenure. Okay, which I'm going to do a whole
yep,
nother episode on. And I remember saying to my husband, "My goodness, we love San Fran. It's a city we fell in love in, and what's happening, and then slowly, especially with Prop 47, the cancer started spreading down to us. And then I remember hearing from people in New York saying, "Hey, it's really bad here too." And I was like, well, be vigilant and be ready, because you're probably next. And sure enough, I mean, New York is nowhere near what a disaster I find LA, San Fran, and many other cities in California to be. But, New York's hanging in, but they're having a heck of a lot of problems. But I can't think of another time in history, Kathy, where all of our biggest, greatest cities were pretty much crime infested and some destroyed. Los Angeles, San Francisco, Chicago, New York, right? I mean, this ever happened in the history of our country where, I mean, I know they all go through phases. New York had a rough time in the 70s and 80s, but then it bounced back. They're all kind of having crummy issues, bad issues.
yeah.
Yeah,
Um, I don't even know if in the 70s and 80s it was as bad as it is now, because now it's not just getting mugged; it's getting mugged by someone high on meth
right.
who has a machete.
Yeah.
Where do they get these machetes? It seems like every single person has that's wandering the streets has a machete or a
Hmm.
knife
For sure.
or some weapon.
Hmm.
And if they don't have an actual weapon, they will kick you.
Hmm.
And like I have a friend who is a very prominent business owner here, and he was in a park in Santa Monica and was ambushed from behind, and he's had to have by a meth vagrant
Hmm.
and was kicked unconscious and continued to be kicked anyways, had to have two brain surgeries, jaw surgery. Um, Probably if he was me, if that had happened to me, I would just have died because I wouldn't have had the money to have all those surgeries.
Right.
But luckily he's wealthy and it's probably gone through his whole savings. But and then what happens? Nothing.
Hmm.
Then there's another one that happens the next week.
Hmm.
Nothing is happening.
Yeah.
And
No.
this is because of Prop 47.
Hmm.
And I am, my PTSD is on high because of Kamala being the
Yeah.
candidate.
Yeah.
I'm like
I'm
so
sure.
afraid because people don't, I really hope this message gets out to people that she is dangerous. She is not pro safety.
Hmm.
And if you just look at her and follow your intuition, you'll see that she's just saying whatever. It's like I could get up there and say, yes, we're going to all buy a house. Yes, we're all going to have our own business. Like, but she's not addressing
Right.
what's really going on.
Well, and
Yeah,
not only
it's
that,
just,
but look at
it's
her track
crazy.
record. That's exactly, you know what I mean, what a lot of I mean, I am laser targeted, as you already know, Kathy, on just educating this country, especially the women, on her track record
Right.
and the destruction she has left behind. And your track record tells everything. So you can't
Yes.
get into office, or you can't be standing there on the DNC stage saying you're going to do this and safety and border control. Where have you been for 4 years? And then look at your track record all the years before that. I mean, from San Francisco DA to state attorney general to the California Senate. There is a reason why, everybody. I want to point this out. There is a reason why when they were having the 2019 presidential primaries, okay, they did the whole primaries. Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, Andrew Yang, the whole gang was up there. California voted her either 5th or 6th. They voted for all those other people. Her own home state said, no, we don't want her. And I'm sure it's because, they know the destruction she left behind. And they also looked at Elizabeth Warren and Massachusetts and a couple of these other people said, well, they're still hanging in. You don't want them, and when you talk about your PTSD, I get so fired up, first because you're a friend of mine and it just angers me. But secondly, I felt, not comparing it to yours, but a little bit of the same thing. Cause, I was a victim of Prop 47 too, which I'll talk in another episode about. But, I kept saying when Joe Biden stepped aside, listen, I'm going to roll with this. I'm going to see who it is. Please do not let it be Kamala Harris or Gavin Newsom. You just can't. You cannot look at the destruction of California and the lives that have been ruined and the victims who have been killed, which I'm going to have a running list of them due to Prop 47 and Prop 57, which we'll talk about later, which was even more disgusting. But the victims and everything, like you please, Democrats, like just don't put one of those two up there. And here we are. So I absolutely feel your pain. And I want to ask you like how are you doing today? I know that's an odd question to ask but I just want our listeners to just hear an update on your life today.
Well, I can't work because of my PTSD.
Mm-hmm.
It's like if someone looks at me funny, I'm a wreck.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always been a sensitive person, but I mean, this is beyond reason.
Understandably.
And and I can't even, I don't have the energy. Like if I think about, because I'm so broke,
Mm-hmm.
I'll think, well, maybe I could, and I just know I would get fired in 2 seconds. Or if I was doing customer service on the phone, I would scream at them.
Yeah.
Because I scream at customer service people I have to deal with. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because I don't have the patience. So I can't work. I'm very unhealthy, which is really, I wanted to live into my 90s. And now I'm thinking the way the world is going, I don't even know if I, is it worth it?
Yeah.
I mean, I love my cat and I don't want to leave my cat, but it's depressing to think that things are just getting worse and worse. And my, how am I going to pay for my rent? I do not qualify. The detective on my case was so mad. She said, listen, I'm going to put you in touch, because she knew that I couldn't afford to live.
Right.
Because what happened is once COVID hit, I lost my job. I was the first to be let go because they hated my PTSD. They wanted me to get over it. I could have sued them, but anyway, they wanted me to get over it, and I couldn't. And so I was the first to go, and I was luckily old enough to collect Social Security, which shame on me that I wasn't a good saver, but I went through my savings. And
most people aren't.
So my detective was very upset that I was having these struggles, and she put me in touch with every agency she could. I do not qualify for disability. I do not qualify for any kind of food stamps. I know it's called something else. I don't qualify for any kind of that. I don't qualify for free therapy. I don't qualify for any kind of rent subsidies. There's nothing for me. So I know that if I was a meth addict, I could probably move into a $500,000 condo that has a music room, a gym, a pool, because they're building that for the vagrants.
Yep.
The dangerous vagrants. Yep. But I worked for 50 years, always paid my taxes, never got in trouble.
Yeah.
And nobody cares, but they sure care about the criminals. Make sure the criminals are,
Right.
It's
If you're a felon, I mean, they're supposedly, putting funds aside, millions of funds. Oh, we're letting them out early, but we're going to put funds towards rehabilitating them, which you and I both know never happened. And I'm going to do a whole nother episode because I've interviewed the felons who were released, and were some of them, but
yeah.
they're like, no, we were just put out on the street. We have no place to go. So here begins the cycle. We're disassociated from our family when we went to prison. They don't want to hear from us. We got no help in finding a job or learning how to use a computer or getting off, dealing with my drug issues and so forth. And so I'm on the street, and now I need to go back to the only thing I know, which is a life of crime. So that's basically the cycle, the sick, twisted cycle of what happened with Prop 47 and Prop 57. But it pains me. It pains me to know that they're even saying they're giving money to rehabilitate and help, convicted felons. They're giving money to help people who aren't legally from our country, by the way.
Yeah.
But somebody like you, Kathy, like you said, who worked her heart out, did everything right, never broke a law, never broke a rule, and gave back to the communities in so many beautiful ways. You're just left alone, and it sickens me. And we're gonna put up, and we've already put up your GoFundMe page. And I know people will donate, because I will do everything in my power to just make sure you are not a victim that's left behind. You're not. You can't be. And it's just wrong isn't the word. I don't know.
Well, thank you. And when I was in court reading my victim impact statement, and I had a handful of friends there, and I read about how my health is failing. I feel like I've aged 30 years since the rape.
Yeah.
I just have so many ailments and so many continue. Like, I have an MRI this week. I have a CT scan next week, all follow-ups for issues that I have.
Mm-hmm.
And, and I'm also worried that they're going to, I worry, well, what's going to happen? And, are they going to show something new, something worse?
Mm-hmm.
So, I feel like I'm hanging on a thread in many ways,
Mm-hmm.
but just the stress of life. I stay in my apartment.
Yeah, I know you do.
I go
We've
out
talked
to
about
go
this.
to the doctor.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I go to the doctor, and people will see this on my GoFundMe page and my
Mm-hmm.
explanation. But I go to the doctor and I go to the market.
Mm-hmm.
I do not socialize. I do not take walks. I'm scared.
Very isolated.
Now, that's a lot of PTSD, because people are definitely taking walks, but people are also getting hurt from taking walks.
Mm-hmm.
I just care about myself. I worry. I want to be able to, come home to my cat, not go out on a walk and then suddenly end up like my friend who had his head bashed in.
And I remember a conversation we had, it was probably 2 years ago, where I was like, Kathy, because as many people might know, I lived in California for 11 years. My family's still there, and I fled. I left because I just couldn't handle everything you're talking about, and what the streets look like and so forth. And I remember calling you at one point and saying, come on, I'm gonna get you out of here. We're getting you out of there. And for reasons like, I think it was like, I don't know if it was Social Security, it was other things, you kind of were stuck there. And it was just added to the whole, this is so unfair. Like, you're stuck in a hell you had to live through, and doesn't make it feel any better. I know, Kathy, but you're not alone. You know what I mean? There's so many of these stories, and the press isn't going to cover them, especially not right now. And that's why I can't. Yeah, I'm so impressed by your bravery to share.
I have mad respect for you to put the word out, the truth out about Kamala and what her America would look like. It would look like a lot more rapes, a lot more murders, because safety is not on her agenda.
No.
And that, I think, is a constitutional right. And I think that's when we elect whether it's a city council member or a president, they are supposed to keep us safe.
That's right.
And that's not happening. She is not. She is not the picture of
No,
safety.
she is not. She is not.
Yeah. So I really appreciate you doing God's work, because that's what you're doing.
Trying, Kathy. I look at it like, listen, I might just be a match, but a match can cause an explosion. So we need brave people like you, Kathy, to come forward and share these stories. And I just want to end by, telling our listeners, our viewers, that through all this, and I know you're very isolated right now, to feel safe and so forth, but somehow you are still the friend who always sends inspirational messages out to everybody. Everybody, you inspire people. That has nothing to do even with your tale we just talked about. I know, because you send them to me. You send messages of love and sunshine, and you are, I call you my princess warrior, and I mean it with all my heart. And I love you, and we're all here for you, and we're going to post that GoFundMe, and you're not going to be a victim of Kamala Harris's, who's her nasty, deceiving, Safe Neighborhoods and School Act that was nothing but deceit and fraud. We're not going to leave you behind. So I want to thank you for joining us today, and I know we'll probably talk in a couple days, and thank you.
Thank you. I hope that your audience believes us, because we're telling the truth. We care about people's safety, and everyone needs to know that safety is more important than anything.
That's right.
If you're not safe,
You have
then
nothing.
everything else. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I just really want to thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, Kathy. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye. So my friend Kathy sits alone, isolated in her Southern California home, scared to even leave it, scared to go to sleep at night, understandably so, all because Kamala Harris made the personal choice to name a dangerous prop on the voting ballot, name it the Safe Neighborhood and Schools Act, instead of calling it what it was, releasing felons related to drugs and buying guns and other crime issues. It was nothing about safe neighborhoods. It was nothing about safe schools. What a farce. We're going to put up Kathy's GoFundMe. Please donate if you can. Even $5 helps. And most importantly, and I know Kathy would want me to say this, please remember Kathy's story on Election Day, because there are thousands of more victims of Prop 47 and also Prop 57, which happened under Kamala Harris's tenure. And a reminder, and I say this on a lot of my past shows, without safety, you have nothing. It doesn't matter. I am for some climate rights. I am for or climate initiatives. I am for women's rights, of course. I am for women having a right to choose what to do with their bodies. I am pro LGBTQ. But at the end of the day, if we don't have safety and somebody keeping us safe, and I don't mean just domestically, I mean from our international enemies, if we don't have safety and confidence, then we have nothing. World War III could soon be on our turf. Your children, your teenagers could soon be drafted. Safety is everything. Look at the track record, remember Kathy's stories, and vote. Make your choice for what you want the future of America to be. Thank you for those who do choose to donate and are able to do so. And thank you to Kathy for sharing today.